Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mikko, and it seems that this year they are having a tradition of inviting enemy spies on the stage, because I'm not a C64 guy. I'm really an Amiga guy. Lapsuus on Amiga. But I do know a thing or two about games. I helped set up the Finnish Museum of Games. I've been writing about games for a quarter century now, and I also create gameplay videos. And one of my favorite things to play on these videos are homebrew games for the C64, for the Amiga, for Sinclair Spectrum. And they also get a lot of interest from the viewers, so people love to see these. And it is a real privilege to have 3 indie developers here on stage who have all created homebrew games. Let's have a quick round of introductions first. So we have Aleksi Eeben, Tero Heikkinen, and Miha Rinne. And let's just go in order, starting with Aleksi. Tell us just a really short summary about your background and how you got into indie game development.
Okay, it all started 40 years ago. When I realized that if you compare the X and Y coordinates of a monster to the coordinates of your own man, then you can make the monster follow you. And I was like 7 or 8 years old. And that was a revelation bigger than anything I've ever learned at school or at work or anywhere. So I'm still on that road.
Thanks.
Yes. Yeah, it kind of started in the mid-1980s, having the ZX Spectrum basic and the Microbit magazine, and typing in the listings there, and you could have that way new games if you wrote code from the magazine. And then I realized that I could also change the code a little and make it my own. And then I started making my own stupid basic games. And I continued with that for quite a long, and learned even a little bit of machine code in the end of the 80s and in the beginning of 90s. But at that time, it didn't turn out into anything complete. So that was something that remained with me for a long time, that I wanted to make a real C64 game in assembler. And then I managed to make that through in the 2013, around that time. And I'm still sort of learning and trying to do more with that.
Thank you. Okay. I got my Commodore 64 in 1988. Before that, I only had computers which I begged my friends to borrow me for a day. And we started making Undead with Pekka on 1990. And then I had this 30-year-long distraction in game industry where I was trying to make games with various success. And then on 2020, we started to make Undead with Pekka again. And now we're making it so that Pekka is coding the tools and doing the assembly, and I'm doing the graphics and game design, and I'm also programming the Unreal Engine prototype.
Thank you. And now this mic works, so you can keep that one. Great. So all of you basically started decades and decades ago, and the logical next question would be, why do you keep at it? What is it that really drives you to create games in the 2020s?
It's fun. And it's really rewarding to do something that you don't get actually much reward from. Because if you get a big reward for what you do, then you will start optimizing your work to get even bigger rewards. But with the indie games, you know, it's at max 1,000 downloads, selling 50 tapes like with the Akuris. I'll show that maybe later. And you can do whatever you want.
Yep, I can relate, because I get less than 1,000 views for all my videos. So.
Oh.
What about Tero?
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing what he said, that it's fun to do. It's kind of challenging. You get to play a game that nobody else has ever played before, and it can be actually quite fun to play your own game. It's a bit strange experience, but
It depends on the game design.
yeah, but it's also challenges me in other ways. I need to learn tools, and because I try to make all the graphics, the code, and music myself, I have to try to learn how to make SID music and things that a normal person might ask somebody else to do the SID music, but I want to try to make it myself. But and it kind of circles around different interests and things that I don't just have to concentrate on the code only or the game design only. There's this graphics and sound side where I can move over between these areas, and it becomes kind of entertaining and challenging.
C64 is a really nice platform for this kind of doing everything. Because, for example, you mentioned sounds, and the C64 sound, it's complex enough that you actually need to do some work on it. It's just not some beeps.
Yeah, you cannot just download samples from somewhere.
Yeah, that either, yeah.
I'll agree with what these two gentlemen said. It was fun, but it was also like an obsession for me to want to like make my own arcade game. So of course it was we were making it with Pekka. So anyway, after being in the game industry for 30 years, what I really appreciate about Commodore 64, now coming back to it, is the very strict limits of memory and processing power, which I think is a good thing for the game design, because you have to really focus what is absolutely essential for the game experience. You don't get to like add 100 tons of crap on it just because marketing or whatever wants it so. So you have to really focus on what you're doing. I would actually say that if you can't make your single-player 2D game design work on Commodore 64, then it's probably not a very good game design in the first place.
Yeah, thank you. The next question I have for all of you is, what is your favorite indie game not developed by you?
Can you start from Miha for this one? I need to think about it.
Go ahead.
To be absolutely honest, I never played indie games that much, although I really appreciate all the indie stuff that's out for the Commodore 64 at the moment. I guess my all-time favorite indie game is actually a browser game called Kalevi Kameli, where you just get as drunk as possible. I don't know if it's available anywhere anymore.
Yeah, I sometimes lose track what is an indie game and what is not, but I think I return to something like Larn, which is an early roguelike game that is much more simple than Hack or NetHack. And if that's an indie game, then that might be one of my favorite indie games ever.
Really difficult to say. There was one that I was thinking immediately. It's not a C64 game, but I think it was called Elastomania. That was like, that works. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if we were talking about C64 games or just any games, but
just anything goes, basically. Yeah. Like I said, I'm from the enemy camp. We don't discriminate here. So all of you have created games or are in the process of creating games, and I have a couple of like more personal questions, especially for Aleksi and Tero, because I've played your productions recently. The short version of the question is basically, why would you do that? And let's start with Tero. Digiloy was a pet ski platformer that you created. Do you want to give us the long version of why you created that game in particular? And I think I have screenshots of it here. Let's see if we can get that on the screen. That's more or less it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that goes back to 2016 or 17. I had made one C64 game before that. That was released, the fourth Django. And for that, I had combined sprites in pet ski background. And after I had made that game, I realized that the entire game could actually maybe run on pet ski, and not just the backgrounds. So this kind of idea started gestating that an action game with pet ski graphics that doesn't look so much like its text graphics, that it would have more like real graphics. And in hindsight, there was this demo called Nothing But Pet Ski that had graphics by, I think, Red Crab or something. And this demo showcased these kind of game ideas in a demo setting. And it maybe influenced a little bit of my thinking of how the game would look like. But when I was making it, I didn't really consciously think about it. But this kind of science fiction guy walking in the scenery that maybe came from that demo in a subconscious way. And then I was off to doing kind of the same game again, the fourth Django game again on pet ski engine. And that's maybe the kind of, I don't see a very clear motive. I didn't really think that it was so new, but when it was released, a lot of people were saying that, wow, I haven't seen anything like that before. And even demo scene, people were kind of a little bit excited about it. So it was almost like a game and a demo at the same time, and that it demonstrated something that might not have been done quite that way before. And that was quite exciting back then, in a way. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah, I really think you did. And yeah, as regards Aleksi, of course, we need to talk about the elephant in the room, or the Aquarius in the room. You asked us to actually show a part of a video by 8-Bit Show and Tell, and since we have the PC screen up there, let's just move over to that, because you said that this is a very good presentation of the game. So
it's much better presentation than mine.
Okay, so let's just watch a couple of minutes of that, and then just tell us when to stop. So we'll go from there. Ignore all the US election videos at the right side of the screen. Yes, I'm panicking. You should too.
Hypnotizing.
It's buffering, yeah.
Let's run it.
Another visitor. Stay well. Stay for a day.
Press play on tape to play.
How's that for an intro there? Okay, so I'll just grab the controller here. Yeah. And let's start the game here. Stage 1, Lake Geneva. Get ready. Okay, so you have this kind of spaceship submarine, and your goal is to go through each lake and collect, what is it, algae specimens or something? And you see up at the top, there's a counter, 2 out of 5. So for the first level, you just have to get 5 samples. It seems the way to get samples to shoot a fish. Well, you like the controller? Yeah, okay, and at the end of each level is a chest, and we'll try, there, we'll take it. This nice explosion, stage 1 completed. Press play to collect bonus. There we go, 100. Filled our oxygen or whatever. Oh, 500, yeah. And this mini game might,
Okay, ending with a nice oh.
Do we have a picture?
Yeah. So this is a game you play with the C64 data set.
Sold out.
Yeah. And why would you do that?
Because I realized that was possible. It was interesting, it was fun, it was novel, and it's actually quite a good controller. And what we didn't see in the video yet, there's actually also haptic feedback given to the controller through the tape motor. So when you go through these seaweeds or something's exploding on the screen, the tape drive is rumbling a bit.
Yeah.
It's a really fun video. You should check this. So much better than any presentation I could ever make about the game. And Robin Harburn, he realized that you can put a certain Lego piece inside the tape drive to make the haptic effect much bigger.
So did we always have a vibration controller without knowing it?
Yeah. So for 40 years nobody used it.
Yeah, but you
Aleksi.
yeah, but you need to give us a bit more. What was the discovery that led you to this question? Because it's not obvious that you can use the data set as a controller.
I can't remember where it came from, but actually about the project and why it's on tape now was that I had kind of the game ready a year ago, and then I realized that Zoo is only every 2 years, and well, I got an extra year to do something, so I made a small tape release for that. And then how I get this to Robin, to 8-bit Show and Tell, was that he was starting to explore the possibilities of data set. So he made 2 or 3 videos about how the controls work, and you can read them from C64. And C64 actually controls when the motor is rolling. So it's going 2 ways. And I was worried that somebody would come up with this idea of controlling a game with dataset before I get to release the game. So I contacted Robin 2 weeks in advance before the release. That, would you like to do a video of this? Someone is going to invent this any day now. So
yeah, because I also follow the channel, and I thought that this sort of timing is no coincidence because it just it was just spot on. Yeah, really fascinating. Moving on to Miha, you've sent us a couple of videos about your project, I think. Should we watch one of those first, or do you want to explain? Because you've been working on a game for a very long time, not that actively, but anyway, it's been.
Oh yeah, there was this early demo made in 1990-92 with me and Pekka, and when we looked at it, we thought that we can make this so much better, and we can stream it from the cartridge. And to be honest, the clips I sent were just something I picked up in a panic and sent something to like if there are any use for. But if you want to display the actual game as it looks now, as it's been demonstrated in the ZOOparty, it's been just uploaded to YouTube on yesterday.
Okay, please give me instructions to find it then.
Under the ZOOparty demo preview, something like that. The channel name owner is AI24.
ZOOparty demo previews.
It's a really amazing project. And
thank you. It was finished in panic, and the 64 version is really rough because we didn't have enough time to, fine-tune the gameplay.
I think it's amazing that we are kind of polar opposites. That I want to do my games really quick, like 1 to 2 months max.
That's because you are more intelligent.
No, come on. We are equal. Almost. But
so it's the Undead Commodore 64 demo gameplay preview for ZOOparty 24. It's this one?
Yeah, it seems to be. It's that one, yes.
Okay, let's let's play that.
Yeah, first you're gonna hear a few seconds of title music, brilliant title music made by Sami Louko, who is sitting over there.
Hey.
He's awesome. And Sami Louko actually wrote us this disk streaming routine back in 1990, so Sami Louko was also involved very early on this game.
Okay, here we go.
All the graphics and animation and even some of the code is streamed from the cartridge. So we don't have a kind of memory limits. Of course there are memory limits, but you know what I mean.
It's like 5 or 4 times more frames than in any C64 game, I guess.
Actually, it has as many frames as Street Fighter 3, the arcade game.
Okay.
So it's a kind of, you could say that Neo Geo game would have as much graphics and animation. I'm exaggerating only a little bit, not much.
Yeah, I feel like not making more than 3 frames for one guy in my games. So.
But the other thing is that there's also like a lot of enemy state machines. The zombies have different reactions, whether you punch them with a left or right fist, or whether you do uppercut, or whether you do a kick. And they also have it's meaningful, the gameplay as well. But because it's very complicated and there's so much work to do, it means that, well, there's just a lot of work to do. You have a game like that with a lot of animation like that, so you need to add a lot of invisible details that don't show the player but give you the feeling. And at this moment, I got all those controls finalized in Unreal Engine version, but the Commodore 64 version is now more like a tech demo. It kind of plays, but you can try it out on the back room anyway. But I am not gonna release this on the net, not like that.
Miha, I have a quick question. So, is your plan that you're going to also release the Unreal version for modern machines when it's ready?
Yes, I am actually hoping that this will be simultaneously released for Steam and Commodore 64.
Oh, okay, nice.
So what was it like making the decision to pick up something that you last worked on 30 years ago, and how much of it was completely like Greek to you at that time?
I egged Pekka for decades that, come on, let's finish it, it's gonna be great, but obviously, well, Pekka was a bit burned out from the original demo, because back then when I was asking him to code features, I didn't understand how much work they were, and he didn't either, and we were all very inexperienced, so his code was like a huge bowl of spaghetti. And when I just kept asking more features, he escaped into an army. But it always bothered me that I couldn't complete this game. So I asked him along the decades. And it was only in the 2020 when I found the original design documents and shared them on social media. And there was a lot of positive reactions. And there was also positive reactions when people saw the original game, which was actually repackaged and released by Triad. And there was just so much interest for the game that I managed to convince Pekka, and Pekka also got more experience, and he knew that he could now create his tools to make this easier, because when you make a project like this, you're gonna need a lot of custom tools, which we made for this project. So, yeah, always wanted to do it, only now we are able to.
Yeah, I really find it fascinating, because it's interesting it's always interesting to go back to your old stuff, but then to just dig it out, start working on it again.
There are examples like this, like Smarty.
Yeah, Smarty and the Nasty Gluttons. Yeah,
a year or two ago, I made the original music when I was like underage years back, and then they found all the old source code and somehow made sense of it and released it as boxed game, Amiga game. You have seen Smarty, maybe?
Yeah.
Sorry? What?
Smarty and the Nasty Gluttons.
For the Amiga. Yeah.
What? I can't hear you.
There's echo.
Smarty and the Nasty Gluttons. It was this game for the Amiga that got its official release not 2 years ago even. Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing that all of you have mentioned was limits. Limits are fascinating, and you have to work within them. But where do you think? What are some of the limits that you have encountered working with the C64? And do you think that how much more does the machine have in it? Let's start with Tero.
Yeah, well, in some ways, what I do doesn't really stretch the machine so much. So perhaps my techniques of using pet ski and a little amount of sprites, I find that I actually have more memory than I would have if I use bitmap graphics. So
you need to go to C16 because you got more colors and all the same pet ski, but less memory.
Yeah. This is one thing that I don't think about the limits so much as I was beginning. That was one of the standard explanations for why it's so exciting, because there are these limits. But somehow I'm maybe more attuned now to this platform. So I just make the stuff, and then I maybe encounter some problem or a limitation. Some of the games I've done are more technically oriented. I tried to make these 3D graphics in this game, the Lances Priua.
Yeah, I have a picture of that. We can put that up on the screen now. I was just going to talk about that. So let's go there.
That was actually more like where I'm trying to stretch my understanding of what could be done technically with my skills and extend those skills into sort of fast 3D graphics, no matter how it looks like, just as long as it's fast and playable. And so there, this technical side was more present, maybe.
Yeah. So as you can probably see, this is a game that involves like a sort of battle between some heavenly bodies, you could even say.
Yes.
Just not as to infringe on anyone's copyright, but yeah.
Some kind of antagonism between, like,
yes.
interstellar.
Yeah. So,
factions.
And this was for me personally, this was one of those jaw to the floor moments, because this was in the wild compo at Vammala Party. And Vammala Party is probably the best demo party in the world, but our compos are not always great. And then you brought this, and we were like, okay, Tero wrote a game, so this is unfair. But yeah, how was it? Like, we obviously see that the inspiration comes from the arcade game, but what was your process creating this?
Yeah. Actually, my interest was at first, how could I fake the enemy ships to look like 3D on the screen? I was mostly interested in making this one segment of the famous game where you control the crosshair and you shoot the fighters, and there would be some kind of 3D thing. And I actually switched between sprites at first as the opponents, and the cockpit or the dashboard would be character graphics or even pet ski. I even dabbled in the idea of using pet ski for the game entirely, but that didn't work. And then I sort of started to focus on this idea that I make this kind of character graphics mode that has been seen in demos, that it's character graphics, but it enables a pixel resolution of 80 by 50, because they are still characters, but because they are defined in the way that I can get these pixel kind of configurations. And this is kind of complex thing. And then the enemy fighters are actually animation frames that are stored in the memory. So even though they might look a bit like vector graphics, they are not, because I realized that in the original game you don't get to see them very often very close either. So I could kind of get away with it. And then I realized I have to make the other segments too, and they pose different kinds of difficulties. Also the towers, the corridor, the tunnel, and blah, blah.
You should port this to VIC-20.
You have understood the very essential thing about game development, that it doesn't matter what you really got there on the screen, but what you can make the audience believe they are seeing.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, going back to the original question on limits, because we very much touched on that with this response, but do you have anything to add, Aleksi?
Sorry.
Do you have anything to add about the limits? How much do you think can still be done with the C64?
I don't know. I've done so many VIC-20 games, and there the limits are so obvious. That doing anything on C64, it feels like there's no limits at all. You got all the sprites and smooth scrolling is easy to do, and everything is like a arcade machine. But I don't know. Maybe there's always something new to find.
Could say something about the limits, because I remember, because I read regularly old C64 magazines, old magazines, and they used to ask these things from game developers all the time back in the 80s, that do you still think that Commodore 64 has something left in it? And they like something in 1987. No, I think that we are going to the very end now. But
everything is moving to Amiga.
I think now that the cheap memory is making a lot of things possible that weren't possible back then, the streaming and stuff like that. But yes, for sure, we are feeling with Pekka that we are knocking the very upper limits now, but you never know.
Yeah, there's on C64, there's obviously what Miha is doing with Pekka. They have the cartridge, and they got lots of memory on the cartridge, and they can stream data from the cartridge to, like, it's quick enough that you can read the sprite frames, every frame there.
Yeah, they're streamed and like unpacked like in real time there. And
Yeah. About the limitations, I could say something about all my mini games. So, since 2000, I've participated in many of these mini game combos. The first one was 2001 or something, maybe. And there were categories like 0.5 kilobyte and 1 kilobyte, and then there's been quite recent Love Byte. Was it Love Byte? Something like that. The size coding online festival, and they have a nano game contest. So you need to write the game in 256 bytes. And I participated with 3 Game Boy games for that. And actually, I got a few nano games coming to the 1-block combo here, so at ZOO. So stay tuned for that.
Ah, nice, really nice. The demo guys, they talked about tools, so let's do that as well. What's your weapon of choice when you start developing? Let's start with Tero again.
Yeah, well, I can just list that I use CA65 assembler from that package, and I use Sublime Text as the code editor on a Linux machine. Then I use Mark's Petsky editor for the Petsky graphics. Then I used Sprite Mate for making sprites. That's a simple editor on the online. And of course, I use Multipaint sometimes for bitmap graphics, but not so much because my games don't use so much bitmap graphics. Not sure if I've forgotten anything, but that is basically the tool package. And yes, in the past I used processing Java to create tables and things like that, or more like if I needed like vector graphics tables, I could simulate it actually on the screen of a processing sketch, and then I see what is there, and then I replicate it on the Commodore 64, almost like step by step to get it work without having to to do all the trial and error process in the Commodore 64 side. So that was, in the more technically complex games, that was a necessary approach. But lately I maybe taken a bit more light approach, and I don't do so much extra tools or extra generated code for. I do more directly in the text editor, and can even edit the sprites in the text editor because you can see the sprite there as binary or things like that. And so yeah, I could even say that at some point I was almost obsessed by making better tools for making these games, but I felt that was kind of dead end. You can always make more better tools and better, and then you get sort of exhausted by that. And it's now better for me to try to find tools that other people have made, and maybe then if they don't do what I need, I can maybe complain the authors and ask them to do something for change.
Like I did to him about his pixel editor. It didn't have a week 20 mode, so now it has.
And I also want to pose this question to Miha, because you picked up an old project. How has your tool chain changed since? Because I imagine that would be quite a bit.
Oh my God. For the original 1990 version, I think Pekka was doing the assembly on Amiga, and then compiling it there was a rather slow process, but it was doable. I was doing the sprites on Kerry Kitchen's Game Maker using joystick, which was horrible. Then we had Art Studio, and Pekka hacked the 64 Art Studio to work with an Amiga mouse. I'm not sure if you were supposed to do that, but we did it anyway. Now we have a completely different system. You want to hear about that too?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we started with tools when we started making this again. And for the last time I was here on ZOOparty, I was demonstrating our graphics tool, which has now progressed quite a lot. So because we need a lot of sprites with a lot of animation, and we also need a lot of interaction with characters because we have a grab and throw system for enemies, which has not been yet implemented in the 64 side. And we also needed to have an export pipeline both to Commodore 64 and Unreal Engine, which is a bit funny, but you can do it. Yeah, you can do it. It creates a JSON script file for the Unreal Engine, so you get all the right sprite placement because you get all the origos, and it creates the sprite sheets for you. So it's just like a grab and go, and when it exports to the Commodore 64 side, it exports the animation so that it gets all the sprite movement, the layers of the sprites, and it gets them all ready so they can just be slotted into the code. And then he has the module packer, so Pekka just presses a button and it gets compiled into the runnable cartridge image. And for programming, Pekka made his own. He looked at the existing compilers of the market and he said something colorful, which I don't dare to say in public. And then he made his own compiler, which was just 500 lines of Python script. He made it in 2 weeks, and he seems to be quite content with it. And he just writes the code in an edit pad. And he did develop an IDE, integrated development environment, so he could have a telnet connection to Winvise and do live debugging. But he just simply felt that he didn't need it, so he just abandoned it. So that's the kind of tools that we got now.
Great. What about Aleksi? You work across multiple platforms, so how do you do it?
Yeah, so for 64 I'm using DASM, and pretty much the same tools as Tero, so there's SpriteMate, Multipaint, and also RetroPixels, and what else? I did make my own cruncher, or compressor that's not exactly as good as PU Crunch, but almost as good. And you get the option to also use byte level data, so it's much faster decompress if you want, at the cost of compression efficiency. Really good for games. And then for Aquarius, I still used my old C64 music sequencer John Player that was made in 2001. there's only one bug I had to fix, because at the time, 24 years ago almost, I had frequency tables wrong. So John player had actually played slightly out of tune for over 20 years. So now I fixed that. And then for this game I wrote new sound effects routine. So in-game you had 2-channel music and 1 channel for sound effects. And I released that sound effects routine as F-Explosion, so that's available for everyone. And for this one I also made the digitized speech at the start. It's compressed with well, some makeshift compression algorithm.
Thank you. We're almost out of time, but we can take a few questions from the audience. Also, we are seeing Twitch chat here, so if you want, you can also write your question there. But do we have any questions for the panelists? Is there a mic that you can pass around, or does this have to be really loud? Mark, you? Yep. Just...
What's next? What are you working on now?
Yeah, let's just go in order. Start with Alex.
Yeah. I'm working on 2 Android games, and actually, good that you asked, because I need 20 Android testers as soon as possible, because I have a game that's already done, but because I have a new Google Play account, I need to find 20 testers for the game, and they have to test the game for 2 weeks before I can go to production. So if anyone got Android, I don't know anybody with Android, everyone's got iPhones. But if anyone has Android, please talk to me, and if you can just sign up to my test and keep it in your phone for 2 weeks, I think that's enough. Maybe start it once or twice so that Google can see from their stats. You've been testing. Yeah.
You have a volunteer back there.
And I can just quickly, the first game is a puzzle, a speed puzzle, and the second game is for cats, for cats to play. So it's getting even more difficult. I need 20 testers with cats and Android, but let's see.
Cool. What about Tero?
Yeah, well, I tend to have like multiple ideas in my head all the time, and then I somehow wait for the moment when there is both motivation and time to do it. But I'm also don't usually want to tell beforehand what is going to come, because I'm afraid I will jinx it if I say that, hey, I'm working on this mega game, and then I realize that my motivation runs out and it will never see the light of day, and that is
has no fear for this.
Yeah, but one thing is maybe that I sometimes think I would like to make a game for some other platform than Commodore 64 or even Commodore machines altogether, but that also maybe has to wait for the right kind of moment. Yeah. I mean a retro platform, not a modern platform. I don't want this to jump through these kind of hoops that Android or iOS developers
It's horrible.
have.
It's horrible. Don't go there.
What about Miha? We do know a bit about what you're working on.
Yeah, that's quite right. I think it's gonna take us still a few years before Undead is finished. First we have to just focus on finishing the essential things about the Commodore 64 version, so it doesn't suck. And once we have the kind of all features in, then I'll just adding more content once I have rewritten all the enemy code on the Unreal version. And I have already lots of ideas of what kind of content there's gonna be, and hopefully then after this first thing is finished, we should have a little bit easier road on just adding content as much as we can fit inside a cartridge. We now have like a decision to make because as far as I know, you can only have an easy flash save on a 512 kilo cartridge, but not on 1 meg cartridge. I don't know if there are yet 1 meg cartridge that allow saves, because that's going to have like effects on the game design. But I'm hoping that we're going to use 1 meg cartridge, and I'm going to add as much content as this going to be possible to add on 1 meg cartridge, and then have it released maybe someday, a few years down the road on the 64 and Steam. And if it's great, then great. And if it's bad, then I'm just going to change my name and hide in the mountains.
Yeah, thank you. To end on a stupid pun, you could say that the game was like off development for quite a while, but it's now undead.
Oh.
Yeah, thank you. I'm here all night. Thank you very much, panelists. Thanks to the audience. It has been an absolute pleasure. I don't actually know where we go from here because I haven't looked at the schedule, but there will be more entertainment coming up. Kids Combo. Yeah, okay. The Kids Combo is next, so don't go anywhere. And there's a 40-minute queue in the kitchen where I was go eat, but maybe I won't eat then. Okay, thank you. Please take it away.